everyone! My name is Kristiana Sfirlea, and I am the author of Legend of the Storm Sneezer. I've been writing since I was your age, so I'm very excited to get to talk with all of you today. I want to share with you one of my deepest, darkest secrets. I am terrified of librarians. It's true! I'm an author, a bookworm, and I'm scared to death of librarians. One of the things I've done to try and get over this fear is to take cookies to my local library on a regular basis. Whether it's Christmas, Valentine's Day, or just because, I'll march up to the front desk, hand over the plate of cookies, and do my best to smile while I'm sweating buckets. When my book came out last year, I wanted to have my book launch party, which is kind of like a birthday party for a new book, at my local library. But you know what that meant? Talking to a librarian to set it up. I've never been more terrified in my life. I went to the library and asked the ladies at the front desk who I should talk to. They told me to talk to the service desk in the adult section, so that's where I went. I picked the nicest looking librarian at the desk, took a deep breath, and explained that I was a new author and it would mean the world to me if I could have a room at the library for my book launch party. I'll never forget what happened next. She looked me up and down, shook her head, and said, "Nobody knows you and nobody cares." I thought I must have heard her wrong. No one could be that rude and unkind, right? "No worries," she repeated it several times, with increasing volume. "No one's going to come to your party. Nobody knows you and nobody cares." Her coworkers started shooting her these shocked looks and scooting away like, "Doop-de-doo, I don't work with this crazy lady." But she just kept getting louder and louder, in a library. I wanted to give her a good shh, but I was almost crying, so I didn't. I just wanted to leave, but the librarian kept going. Finally, she said she wanted to look my book up on Amazon and asked for my full name. I told her, Kristiana Sfirlea. She stopped dead, looked up with horror-struck eyes, and said, "You're the cookie people?" Yes, this was the worst experience I've had with a librarian to date, but it's also been the most helpful. Every time I put myself out there and try something new, I can hear her voice in the back of my head going, "Nobody knows you and nobody cares." And it motivates me. It motivates me to really know the people that I meet and really care about them, and remind others to do the same. Because each of us is worth being known and cared about, and our dreams too. If you've ever felt like nobody knows you and nobody cares, it's not true, and you're not alone. Legend of the Storm Sneezer is full of characters who are finding their place and making room for others, too. I'd like to tell you more about my book, or rather, show you.
Rose Schuyler sneezed a magical storm cloud at birth, and it's followed her around ever since. But when Stormy causes too many disasters, Rose is taken to an asylum in a haunted forest whose trees have turned to stone. Guided by time-traveling letters, Rose teams up with her future selves and her maybe imaginary best friend to save her storm cloud and solve the mystery of the specters and the stone trees. But will they find what killed the ghosts before what killed the ghosts finds them?
Now that you know the gist of Legend of the Storm Sneezer, I'm going to give you a sneak peek of the book. Entry 1. Hello Darkness, my new friend. Oh, the joys of being your own babysitter. Self-employment had never tasted so sweet. Yes, lack of pay was a slight disadvantage, but why would a girl be counting coins when she could be counting the steps from her house to the heart of a forbidden forest? Of course, just because she was her own babysitter didn't mean she was alone strolling the backwoods of her family's estate. Rose was never alone, not with the little gray storm cloud following her wherever she went. Inside, outside, in the bathtub or in bed, there it was, dripping raindrops like a runny nose. Lightning combed her curls till every strand was a live wire, and the thunder, well, like most uncomfortable noises, thunder picked the absolute worst times to crack. Her storm cloud was, without any competition, the biggest nuisance in the domain of Chunter Woods. Gosh, she loved that thing. I'm a good babysitter, aren't I? Rose asked her storm cloud. Stormy considered this, fluttering in thought, and patted her head affirmatively. Her hair poofed like a kernel of popcorn. Thought so. She nodded in satisfaction. She really was a good babysitter, qualified in all babysitting necessities, such as storytelling, how to open child safety locks, and... Can we do that thing where you sock someone in the stomach when they're choking? Stormy swooped, ramming between her ribs with the force of a fist. Rose's belly flopped on the ground, supplies spilling out of her rucksack. Good, she wheezed. Good to know. When her lungs filled with air again, Rose got up and recovered her fallen equipment. The best babysitters always come well prepared. She'd packed chocolate bars and strawberries for sustenance, a wooden sword for protection. Oh, don't laugh. Wooden swords can be very threatening. When was the last time you pulled a half-inch splinter from your skin? And her scarlet umbrella, which served no purpose whatsoever, except to twirl over her shoulder and bring out the color of her red and gray wings. Umbrellas were for indoor use, where mothers preferred wet floors to soggy bread and rain-soaked tablecloths at dinner. Given the choice, Mama would prefer her house bone dry at all times, but particularly when she had company over, which was why she shooed Rose outside every Tuesday afternoon while she hosted her ladies' knitting club. Rose shook out her feathers and reached for the final object from her rucksack. It was Blackout's Tales, the famous 800-page anthology of old world legends, and the reason she was traipsing through the woods today, same as every Tuesday the past year. Do you know how many Tuesdays there are on a calendar? A lot. A lot. And she and Stormy had spent every one of them following the example left behind by the greatest legend seeker to ever live. Blackout was a man who devoted years to chasing down ancient scholars. Okay, maybe not chasing, they were pretty ancient, but like power walking, to collect their stories of the old world in the book that would earn him his name. And once Blackout's Tales was complete, Blackout dedicated the rest of his days to storytelling, traveling from realm to realm, regaling the masses with his life's work. What Rose wouldn't have given to hear him speak and experience his trademark move firsthand. See, the book earned him his name, but the feat at the end of recitals earned him his fame. When Blackout finished his stories, he would close the cover of Blackout's Tales, stand up from his storyteller's chair, and sing. It was a lullaby laced with magic, one that swept his listeners into oblivion. And as they blacked out, Blackout himself would disappear from the crowd, exiting the town the way he did everything else, without a trace. Ages had passed since Blackout's death, but his legends remained, and Rose was going to seal his legacy forever. She was gonna prove that the legends of Blackout's Tales were true. I hope you enjoyed this sneak peek of Legend of the Storm Sneezer, and I'm so excited to answer your questions. Talk soon! You guys asked some amazing questions, and I'm so excited to answer them. So here we go. Question 1. How many times do you rewrite sections of a book? That is a good question. I would say that I rewrite books. So I don't really rewrite sections, but I do rewrite, portions of the book that change the storyline. Probably about 3 times. So about maybe 3 or 4 different drafts. Question 2 is in a similar vein. How many ideas usually get scrapped? I very rarely will actually take out scenes from a book. Usually every scene counts for me, so I don't scrap any ideas. Even the ones that I take out of a book, I will put them in a document labeled things I will eventually write or something. So I would definitely say don't ever scrap an idea. Don't ever just say, I'm never going to use this idea. Take it out of your project if you feel like it's not fitting, but don't get rid of it because you never know when it's going to come up later and it's going to be the perfect scene. How many times did you have to edit your book until it was accepted by the publisher? So once a book is accepted by a publisher, it goes through about probably 4 or 5 rounds of revisions. But editing the book before it gets accepted by the publisher, that was probably about 4 revisions too. So in total, probably you're looking at like 8 revisions before your book is actually published in a book form. Do you design the cover of the book, or does somebody else do that? I do not design the cover of the book. I have someone at my publisher who does that, but so I work with an illustrator and a cover designer. The illustrator who comes up with the illustrations for the book, again, I don't do the illustrations, but my publisher is amazing in that they let me come up with the idea for the book cover. So I write out what I want the book cover to look like. They send it off to the illustrator, my amazing illustrator Anastasia, and she takes these ideas I have in my mind and turns them into masterpieces. So that's kind of how that process works. Was it hard to find a publisher to publish your books? Oh, yes, very much so. Publishing is a hard industry to get into. But it's so worth it, especially if you, that's why I always say that if you want to be a writer, you have to really love it, like really, really love it, because between querying literary agents, which is the step before sending to publishers, sending your work to publishers, I had about 50 rejections. And then when I was actually submitting to publishers, I racked up another 40. So you're looking at close to 100 rejections before you actually get your book published. So it's not for the faint of heart, and it definitely teaches you a lot about perseverance and persistence. Have you ever come to a point where you were told that your book wasn't good enough? If so, what did you do in response to it to prove those people wrong? That is a really good question. I love this question. Yes, I have been told that my book is too quirky, too much, not enough. I've heard so much, and it really crushed me at first. It made me feel like I wasn't going to be able to be a writer anymore, especially when I got feedback from someone that I thought I could trust, and then they didn't understand my book at all, and it made me feel like no one was going to understand my book, which isn't true at all. I've had amazing connections with readers who have read my book and loved it, and that's just one of the highlights of being an author. So what did I do in response to prove those people wrong? I kept at it. I said thank you for your input, and I considered it, and I made sure to be consistent and committed to my story and to the people that I have in my life that I know I can trust to tell me whether something needs to change in my book or not. But really, you just got to be committed to your story. You've got to understand that not everyone is going to see it the way that you do. Not everyone is going to appreciate what you put into it. You know, 2 people can read the same book and get something completely different out of it, and that's okay. That's actually a good thing. It's called having different tastes. So just know that you really need to be able to trust the people whose input you take. And again, you have a story to tell. You have a story to write. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. That's how I push through it. What did you have to go through to get to the place where you are right now as an author? Well, as you can probably guess by now, a lot of rejections, a lot of rejection letters, a lot of criticism, a lot of perseverance, and a lot of just falling in love with writing and meeting the amazing people just along the journey. They really, I've had amazing critique partners and readers and publishers and editors and agents and just so many people who have made this writing journey amazing and hard and disappointing sometimes, but always evolving into something that I'm really proud of. So that's, some of the things that have shaped me by what I've been through up to this point to getting my book published. How do you produce ideas that have not been done yet or are special? This is a really good one. I try to take something that is very random and try to turn it into a story. So something like a 13-year-old girl who sneezed a magical storm cloud at birth. I just try to let my imagination run free, run wild. And then really, even if the ideas sound zany and out there and crazy and never done before, that's what you're looking for. So I know that really just let your imagination have fun, let it loose, but also get a lot of inspiration from other things. One of the other things that I do to try to come up with original ideas is I read books and I get this picture in my mind of where the story's going to go, and then when it doesn't take that turn, I say, oh, well, maybe I can write a book about that, or maybe I can come up with a story like that. So always be kind of, when you're watching movies or reading books or playing video games and seeing the plot, try to imagine how you would write that story and then write a story about it. And that's one of the best ways I've come up with being original and trying to come up with unique ideas. Do you ever get a little tired from writing and or reading? Yes, to both. I think no matter how much you love something and it's your job and all of that, you still get sick of it. I mean, I love writing. I love it so much, but there are days where I'm just like, I don't want to be a writer anymore. So I definitely get that. But then those are times where I just say, all right, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to do something completely different. I've taken breaks from reading too. Sometimes I'm just like, I've read too much. I can't read anymore. So I do take a break from reading too, and just try to do something that's completely different. And, 9 times out of 10, by the time I do try something different, I'm ready to read again and I'm ready to write again. Has writing and publishing a book changed the way you see yourself? That is a very interesting question. I would say that yes, I think being on this writing journey has taught me a lot about my strengths and weaknesses. I have a tendency to doubt a lot, to not want to persevere, just kind of want to give up and stuff. And at the same time, being on this writing journey and doing these things has kind of helped me not overcome those, because I still struggle with them, but helped me consistently fight against that. So it's equal parts. Yeah, I think it has changed the way I see myself, both knowing that I need a lot of help and learning how to overcome those things. How do you keep a story and its plot interesting to keep a reader hooked? An excellent question, and one I'm very excited about, because I have a unique way of, I don't know how unique it is, but it's my way of doing writing, and I love it. I think it really helps me with my story. I come up with the plot twists of the book before I start the book. So I figure out what my main plot twist, because I'm a writer who loves plot twists. I love to have multiple plot twists per book. So I figure those out before I start writing. And I use them as anchoring points throughout the story. Just so I always consistently have that tension and knowing where that story is going and knowing these certain scenes that are coming up that are going to just hopefully blow the reader's mind. That's how I try to keep that pacing and keep that interest. What made you want to write books for teenagers? I love books for teenagers. I loved them when I was a teenager, and I just never stopped. So, yeah, I definitely wanted to write just because that's something that I love. I'm not really into adult books, and I just think kids' books and teens' books are just a lot more interesting and have a lot more fun. So that's why I chose to write them. How long does it usually take to find a theme for your story? That's a really good question too. Kind of like with the plot twists, how I do come up with the plot twists before I start writing the story. I do the same with my themes. I figure out the theme of the book before I actually start writing the book. And usually the way I come up with themes, like, so for example, in Legend of the Storm Sneezer, book 1, the main theme I think is sacrificial love. And so I really thought about my characters and thought about scenes with them together and just seeing their relationships and thinking, what big things can happen in this story that I can make centered around this theme. And when I started coming up with these ideas, and they're spoilers, so I'm not going to share them, but they were just, I think getting the character relationships right and seeing how they would interact with each other and finding out those themes kind of comes from, yeah, it's basically based off of the characters and their relationships to each other. That's how I find a lot of my themes. Just seeing them interact with each other and their different personalities and the conflicts that would arise from those. So yeah, but I love coming up with themes before I start my book. That's definitely one of the main things that I do. What was the first book you wrote that the editors refused to publish, and how did you handle it? Actually, this is interesting, but Legend of the Storm Sneezer is my first book. It's the first book that I finished, and it was picked up by a publisher. Now, that's not always the story that you hear. Most of the time you hear authors writing 4 or 5 books, but the truth is, I love the story. I was not going to give up on it, and so I did the work. I did the rewrites. I kept with it, and I had it in my head that if I didn't publish Legend of the Storm Sneezer, because it's the book of my heart, I wasn't going to be a writer. So I stuck with it, and I want to encourage you, if you have a story out there that you love so much, don't give up on it. Keep at it and keep doing the work that's going to make it possible for it to succeed. Yeah, that's a really good question. How did you come up with the title for your book? I came up with that last minute, 4 months before publication, actually. It used to just be called The Stormwatch Diaries, but my publisher was like, this book is way too quirky. That can be the overall title of the series. That's fine, but we need something really clever for the book title. And so I just thought of what my character, Rose, would name the book, and people always laugh when I tell them that she sneezed a magical storm cloud at birth, so that's, that's what I chose for the title. Do you have a favorite character that you have written about? I love all of my characters. I put a little piece of myself into each one of my characters. So I love all of them. But I think that Rose and her best friend Marek are my two favorites to write, just because their dynamic is so much fun. Like, they are like the best friends. And they're so funny, and they bring out this wisdom in each other that I think is just really awesome. So I love writing them, and they're just really funny. They're really fun to watch banter, and just, they're my favorites to write. Do you write the genre you like to read? Yes, I do. Absolutely. I love especially middle grade fantasy. I will branch out sometimes, but fantasy and middle grade and, books for teens, those are that's my home. That's my reading home, and I get a lot of inspiration from those kind of books. So, yes, I definitely write the genre I like to read. Let's see. Once you've fully finished a book, revised, published, and out for sales, do you ever go back to read it, or are you kind of tired of it at that point? Also, do you prefer to read your book or other authors' books? So this is different for each author, but I love my books. I love my stories. I love my characters. I love their humor. I love laughing at them. I'm one of those people that laughs at her own jokes. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll leave up to you. But I do love rereading my books. There is a point after you've done like 8 revisions where you need a couple months off from the book. Like like my second book right now, I just finished my last round of edits, and I am so done. I never want to read this book again. But I know from experience that in a month or 2 or 3 or 4, I'm going to absolutely want to reread this book, and I will have a good time doing it. So yes, I'm one of those authors that loves to reread her books. How have you bypassed a writer's block? That's a good question. I think depends on the writer's block. A lot of the time, though, I just like to take a walk and listen to music and kind of just think through the problem. Especially if it's like really nice weather out, I'll go to a park. But if I need an actual break, if it's not like me trying to work out a problem in the book, but me just being sick of writing or just needing a break and knowing I'm not gonna make any more progress on it if I don't take a break, I will just do something different. I'll watch a movie. I'll go hang out with friends. I'll do some housework. I'm really, for some reason, like doing dishes and vacuuming and cleaning and stuff. That really helps my writer's blocks for some reason. And I think if your parents heard that and know that they would help you, don't tell them that. You're going to get a lot more chores. How do you think of personalities for the characters in your book? Do you base them off of people you know? I don't generally base them off of people I know, just because I don't. I know those people, and so even if I tried to take their personalities and put them in a character, that character is always going to evolve into someone else. So I do take aspects sometimes from people. Like one of my characters, Cade, she's definitely has some of my mom and my sister in her and stuff, but she's her own person. One of the ways I come up with personalities for the characters in my books is I'll just take pieces that I like from characters all over fiction, just like from movies that I like or TV shows or books, and just kind of take, ooh, I like this, I like their sense of humor, I like how they do this, and just kind of reshape it into a new character. But a lot of the times, even though I do that a lot, but one of the things that I also do is just try to find a character that's new. So Rose, she is definitely an unusual main character. She's a lot different than the main characters that you're going to read in a lot of other books. And that's because I wanted to see someone who was more high energy, who was more emotional, who was more hilarious, and just a lot more things than I was seeing in the books that I was reading. I wanted to, present and represent a different kind of person. So a lot of the times when I'm thinking of personalities, I try to think of things that haven't been done before, and personalities that resonate with me personally. Are you writing any books right now? Yes, I am. I am writing, I just finished editing book 2 of the Stormwatch Diaries, which comes after Legend of the Storm Sneezer, and it is entitled Legend of the Rainbow Eater. So that was my big project right now. But I've just started work on book 3, which title is to be announced, but it's a lot of fun and I'm having a really good time with it. I'm also being published in an anthology, which is like a collection of short stories. I've been published in 3 other anthologies, so this is going to be my 4th, and I'm really excited about that too. Let's see. What are some ways you use to get your thoughts on paper? I like staring off into space and just daydreaming, like especially if it's like really nice weather out. I'll like go out on my porch or something and just kind of listen to the birds and just kind of visualize stuff, or go for a walk and just try to visualize scenes, kind of see them like a movie before writing down ideas. And that's what I'll do too, is I'll kind of sketch out scenes, like, just maybe a paragraph that describes what happens in that scene, and just kind of, that's one of the things I do to kind of get me prepared for writing that chapter. When you were in school, did you like ELA class, reading class? Have you ever wanted to give up on a book? Those are 2 good questions. Yes, I loved reading class when I was in school. I'm actually dyslexic, so my mom had to work really hard with me to be able to read well, but she did, and I love reading. So yes, I loved reading in school. Loved it way more than my other subjects, especially math. Have you ever wanted to give up on a book? Yes. And I have given up on quite a few books, actually. I'm kind of a picky reader, in all honesty. Like, I have this thing called the 40-page test, where if I get past 40 pages in a book, I'll keep reading it. But if I don't make it up to that 40-page marker, I'm like, there's a lot of other books out here, and if I'm not connecting with this one personally, I'm just going to say that this wasn't the right book for me. So yes, I have given up on books. Now, my own books, it's my job. I'm not allowed to give up on them, even though sometimes I do want to. Let's see. Go to the next page here. Is the publishing process expensive? That's a good question from Gracie. So it really depends on what kind of publishing route you take. If you're going to self-publish, as in publish without a publisher, yeah, it's definitely going to be pretty expensive, but it doesn't cost anything if you go with a professional publisher. So yeah, it's not expensive if you end up going that route. It's hard to get a publisher, but once you get it, you don't have to pay it for anything. Do you have different publishers or the same one? I'm working with just one publisher right now, and this was from Amelia, by the way. I'm just working with one publisher now because I have a series, so with series, you usually stick with one publisher. So that's, but who knows, in the future, I might be working with another one. You can definitely work with multiple publishers. How long does it take after a book is written to go to publication? Good question from Allison. It really depends on what their publishing schedule was like. Usually it takes anywhere from 4 to 5 months to 2 years. So it's really kind of up in the air. It depends on the publisher and what their publishing schedule is looking like. I was in for a shock because my publisher had an opening in May and I signed with them in January. So I had 4 months before my book was out in the world, and that was crazy. I don't know if I'd recommend that, but I did love it, and it was definitely an awesome experience. All right, I think we have time for just a few more questions here. How do you make sure your book does well after it publishes? That one is just, it takes a lot of hard work and commitment. I know I say that word a lot in this, and I really mean it, because you have to be committed to this if you want it to go anywhere. It's a lot of rejection even after you're published and your book is out there and you think you've made it. getting the book into kids' hands, well, for me, it'd be kids' hands because I write for kids. That's just really hard. And especially with COVID right now, like doing book signings and all of those sorts of things is just really, we're trying to find a new way to do stuff, which is why I'm glad I get to talk with you like this today. But yeah, I think it's just a lot of commitment, a lot of putting yourself out there, and persevering even if nobody knows you and nobody cares. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question super well, but yeah, I think it just takes a lot of character and a lot of persistency. And I think that's all the time we have. I'm sorry for anybody's question I didn't get to. They were all amazing questions, and I really love doing this. So I hope you enjoyed my answers, and thank you so much for having me. Bye.